FPS games are the largest genre of games in the console gaming market, where most games today are basically trying to be carbon copies of Call of Duty and are pretty much hooking today's modern audience by Achi highlight Twitch shooters, mainly Call of Duty, Battlefield, and most recently XDefiant. The competitive nature of FPS games has pretty much stayed the same for the last few years and doesn't look like it's really going to change anytime soon. Or once in the era of the early 2000s where there was a mix of modern sci-fi and old school at least in the timeline shooters, or maybe somewhat arena shooters since Epic Games was developing Unreal Tournament 3. Those days have since then gone and turned into more casual experiences with XDefiant, Call of Duty, Halo, and Counter-Strike 2. What's up guys, it's Quantum Wolf here, and today I want to talk about the old school matchmaking in XDefiant. Old school matchmaking is what modern FPS games need. Now what exactly is old school matchmaking? Well, typically if you compare skill-based matchmaking to old school matchmaking or connection-based matchmaking, you might think to yourself, well, skill-based matchmaking is basically what the new Call of Duty games and what many first-person shooter games use nowadays, which is basically you win a match, you lose a match. You win a match, you lose a match. And while some YouTubers, mainly in the Call of Duty community, will basically say there's no difference between skill-based matchmaking or old school-based matchmaking, well, there actually is a difference. It just may not be notable to the type of players who are the sweaty, diehard casuals or competitive gamers like Dr. Disrespect and Tim the Tatman. But, you know, skill-based matchmaking, in my opinion, is what ruined modern FPS games. Games like Call of Duty, where if you lose a match and you go up against sweaty tryhards like there's no tomorrow, and then the next match you win a match, it basically is that split-second decision of like, okay, maybe I can win a match, maybe I can get better. Well, why does skill-based matchmaking ruin modern games? What is it that actually kills most of the casual gaming community? Well, it's skill-based matchmaking is all about skill. If you lose a match, then the game basically tracks that skill about how bad you did in that match and puts you up against players who did pretty much just the same as you did. They didn't do very well. And then the next match where you win and you did really, really well, the system puts you up against players who did super well in the game, and then you end up going up against people who can easily camp and snipe you, just clean house like there's no tomorrow. And that is primarily what ruins modern day FPS games, and that's why old school matchmaking is what FPS games need. Now, old school based matchmaking is basically where it's just about you being the first person who connects to the lobby, right? It's connection based, and well, maybe the term isn't connection based, but it's basically just where you're the first person to get connected to the lobby. You're the first person that this other person finds. It doesn't matter what skill level you are. It doesn't matter if you're a higher rank than them. It's just you're just the first person who finishes the lobby. And then the old school type of matchmaking, and we're talking the PS2 and the original Xbox, where most FPS games, and then there were some that didn't have this, where they had ranked lobbies. So if you were level 5, you were most likely going to go up against a player who was level 5 or 10, right? No more, no less. And there's a certain amount of levels that you can't play up against. And I honestly think this is probably where the industry should be going towards, but the problem I think it faces is that if a game takes on more players than it needs in the beginning, then you're fine. But if it doesn't take as many in the later part of its life, then you're screwed, because then you can't find players as quickly anymore. But, you know, it would probably make the experience more balanced So that's why I think the connection-based matchmaking from the 360 and PS3 era, where you're just the first person to connect up to the lobby, is probably what should be moving forward. Like in Halo 3, or I'm sorry, not Halo 3, like in Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, there was some form of skill-based matchmaking in every Call of Duty game since then. But the problem is that newer Call of Duty games have is that it's the only way to matchmake, whereas in the older ones, it wasn't the only way. It didn't force you into skill-based matchmaking system. So games like XDefiant released today should really strive to try these new or old experiences and bring them into the newer era of gaming, because that way players don't have to complain. And from the recent news that Black Ops 6 will be ditching or nerfing its skill-based matchmaking and a lot, then, you know, we might see changes coming more than what we wanted to before. To summarize the advantages of incorporating old-school matchmaking in modern FPS games like XDefiant, if old-school matchmaking was the new norm, it probably would convince players to play games that have a lower player count a little bit more. Maybe, this is just me spitballing here, that it would probably convince them to stick around more and probably make them have a longer lifespan. But, you know, unfortunately, because of the era of corporatization in the video games industry, they want to keep player attention as long as humanly possible. Where they need players to play their game, they need players to engage in their game, and they need players to spend money in microtransactions in their game. And if the goal is player retention, skill-based matchmaking probably could convince the competitive gamers to stick around, but it won't convince the casual gamers to stick around. And if the casual gamers are neglected, then, you know, they're most likely not going to come back, and they'll just have to sweat if they want to compete. Halo 4 and 5 are the prime examples of this. Halo 4 appeared to casuals. Halo 5 appeared to competitive gamers. Now you might be saying, well, those games suffered from movement, not the matchmaking. And well, yes, you're right. And if you also say, well, skill-based matchmaking can be used for, you know, casual gamers as well if the game is dedicated to both of those types of gamers. And well, yes, I do agree that, you know, skill-based matchmaking can be used for both types of gamers. However, which ones are going to defend it and which ones are going to say that it's not what we want? And which is going to say this is the best way that video games should be this is the best way for video games to last, and this is the best that video games have been in a long time. And the other says, well, no, not entirely. The old ways were a little bit better, but if the new experiences we have today were brought into the old matchmaking ways, then, you know, we probably have a middle ground there. So, which is which? Well, the casual gamers are mostly going to say that the older ways of how we matchmake into the newer games are better, and skill-based matchmaking needs to be nerfed entirely or needs to get out of the industry itself. But personally, I think it probably would be best if they just nerfed it. If they absolutely have to keep it in games, then nerfing it might be the best way to go about it. Alright everyone, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, and subscribe to Quantum Wolf for more gaming content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.